Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is David Wilson. I'd like to ask the question, are there other options available for successfully operating our national parks? Imagine a company with free renewable inputs, a few key shareholders, significant conservation, community and long-term financial returns, a range of product diversification where every client is happy, staff who have an office with a view and lifestyle that money can't buy. Lastly, and very importantly, the strongest long-term legislative protection possible for your investment. Too good to be true? Well, I believe it's possible, and I also believe it has to be the future for a lot of our national parks. Let's start with what are national parks. The current paradigm, I feel, is this. It refers to an area declared or owned by a sovereign state for the conservation of wild nature, for posterity, and a symbol of national pride. The truth is, it's not working. So what do we need to do? Well, this is where I think we should be. The term national park is a brand name that is associated with nature-based tourism, and it defines a high-quality natural environment with a well-designed tourist infrastructure. Sorry, Dr. Leakey. So what do we need to do? Well, we need to challenge. We need to challenge the status quo. How many times have you heard or seen all the money is remitted to central government? Basic infrastructure is crumbling. The lack of funding and resources is there. The list goes on. Scouts haven't been paid. We need to move away from the old mentality of treating our national parks as untouchable, hallowed, protectionist ground, and at times largely inferior to the private conservation investments if we're going to win this war. How do we do it? We need to engage. We need to engage our governments, investors, communities, and NGOs. There are currently 352 designated national parks in Africa. How many of those do you think are self-funding and profitable? I would guess less than 4%. The total area of the 50 largest parks in Africa account for 500,000 square kilometers of exceptional conservation potential, and that's the tip of the iceberg. I recently had the fortune of being involved with African parks on a particular project over the last 5 years. The most current and critical challenges they face are seen on the slide. Interestingly and important to note, political will to hand over seems to be a lot more forthcoming than we would have initially thought. So where does that leave us? Well, we need to believe. My challenge to the lab this year is to imagine the possibilities, challenge the status quo, engage with governments and NGOs and investors on options and solutions, and lastly, believe that it can be better than what it is. The truth is, national parks have acted as an anchor point for a lot of our private concession success over recent years. Somewhere in this conversation lies a DNA strand for a successful privatization type model for some of the national parks. And I put this in here because if it gets tough, which it will do, and you feel scared, remember Africa is not for sissies. And my final thought, national parks need to be run like a business if they're going to survive and if they're going to contribute positively. I leave you with a thought from Henry Ford, who said, vision without execution is just hallucination. You never know. You might get that office with a view you can't buy. Imagine, challenge, engage, believe. Privatization could be the future for some of our national parks. Thank you.